I don't actually see a majority of council back. Oh, Councilmember Way, I see you. Okay, great. All right, we are on to the section of our agenda that has to do with public hearings. That would be item number 24. Before we begin this item, however, I'd like to formalize for this upcoming year our procedure for when council asks its questions, similar to our prior item. However, this is a public hearing, which does have a flow chart in the second page of our agendas. It's the first two pages are non-enumerated, so I'm talking about the second non-enumerated page before the page that says page 1 on the bottom of it. There's a flow chart for public hearings. And so I would like to move at this point that for public hearings, council questions of staff and the applicant or appellant will follow all of the following in this order. First, staff presentations or reports, then second, applicant or appellant presentations, and then third, public comment, and then fourth, any response by the applicant or appellant to public comment, at which point staff could also follow up on public comments and questions. That is my motion. May I have a second for that motion? And so I don't see any hands raised from council. Councilmember Moore.
Could you clarify, is this just for this particular item, or are you trying to have this implemented for future items as well? Because this is a little bit different from some of the suggestions that I had received and guidance. So I'm wondering how far you want to have this be applicable.
Okay, so okay, so first of all, I would just say that this is just a motion to clarify the procedures of our public hearings. And our public hearings are flow charted on the second page. And so that would be what I would like to have be our procedure for this year. I have actually implemented that or attempted to implement that. And the reason I want to make this a motion right now is that in past public hearings, it's not clear when other people such as staff or the applicant are expected or invited to give comment. And so I just don't want to conflate that with our deliberative process mainly. And so my thinking is that if we have all the presentations, the public comments, and then the follow-ups to those public comments by the applicant, appellant, and staff, then we can start our questions on council at that point. So it's in effect, it's a mirror of what we just went through, except what we just went through was an ordinance or an action item, and that's not actually flow charted on our agendas. So I'm asking for a second on this so that this doesn't become, I won't say a virtually endless exercise, but I want to be able to create a process that gets all of the concerns out there, but also is optimally efficient. You're looking very skeptical, so I'm going to go on to Vice Mayor Chow to see if I can get a second for the motion that I've placed on the table. Vice Mayor Chow.
Wow. Okay, so you precluded my option there. Thank you.
Well, if you'd like to second it, please do. But Vice Mayor, I'm not saying you.
I asked for clarification, and you went on an expression to say that I wouldn't provide a second.
Okay. Well, would you like to
provide a second? Thank you.
Do provide I'm sorry. Let me hear that. Did you provide a second to this motion?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Vice Mayor Chow.
So this is only for this item?
No, this would be the procedure for public hearings going forward.
Then that's not on the agenda.
I was advised by our legal counsel that this would be the appropriate manner in which to put this forward.
This is for all public hearing. The public might want to comment on the process. But anyway, for this one, I'm confused. So when would the council be able to ask staff and the applicant question?
Okay, well, that's a great question. That's a great question. Let me clarify this. Okay, so first it would be staff presentation, all right? And then it would be applicant presentation. And then it would be comments by members of the public. And then it would go back for the applicant as well as staff to follow up on public comments. And then at that point is when council would be able to ask the questions. After the council questions, then it would be our deliberative process. And so after those council questions, that is the close of the public hearing. What I want to avoid is while we're deliberating, having this back and forth exchange with essentially members of the public and our staff. But I think that if you realize that the questions at the end for council, after all of the presentations have been made, and after the public has had a chance to put in their input and get responded to by the applicant and the staff, that is a better process to begin our questions, because all that information is then out there. Okay, so then our questions can go through those rounds of questions with staff and the applicant, and then following that, we begin our deliberative process with motions. Okay, so then motion practice is essentially something that closes off the public hearing. That's not any different. It's just something that hasn't been adhered to in practice. Because when we're deliberating, it should be closing off the public hearing unless staff or, in this case, the applicant is invited to, have a conversation with us during that deliberative process.
So then this flow chart seems to have the missing part is when the council gets to ask questions. So during our deliberation, if we have more questions, we still get to ask staff and the applicant, right?
That's correct. I'm basically, all I'm doing is moving council questions to after when the applicant and staff have had an opportunity to respond to public comments and questions.
I do have a question, because a lot of times the public asks the question, staff may or may not answer, and usually they answer only when the council repeat that question.
Okay, well, that's
So
fair.
how-
Let me respond to
Yeah.
that. So you'll notice what I was doing for our immediately prior item. I made a check-in after the second public comment to staff to make sure that staff was tracking those questions so that they got to those after the public comment was concluded. And I will do the same thing in this process. What I want to avoid is, council starting to ask questions during the presentations and then going off on a deliberative process. And then that just unnecessarily prolongs the entirety of the item. So what I'm trying to do is to make sure that we have the information in front of us, ask the questions, and then have the deliberative process begin. I really, I truly believe after looking at all of this and going through a lot of meetings that this is the best and most efficient way, and it doesn't cut out any part of our process. In fact, it enhances it. So Councilmember Moore, you have a hand raised?
Okay, so when not that this is, well, perhaps it is pertinent. On the Planning Commission, the guidance that I received was that you would have the staff report, the applicant would provide their report, and then the commission would ask their clarifying questions. It was not for deliberation, and then you would go to the public, and I was given a report on how to conduct the meetings in that manner. But I sometimes the commission, or in this case the council, can get to the point with some of their questions if we're being disciplined about it and we're not veering off into deliberation, as you mentioned. We can get to the point on some of these questions that we really need to have answers to more quickly, and perhaps head off some of the members of the public and the way they're asking questions in a timely manner. So I wish that you didn't see it, that we need to move to public comment and not have the council ask the questions after the applicant provides their presentation, but I do understand what you're up against.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Councilmember Moore. And I would just ask that we try it this way, and also add that we have been doing it this way for the last several meetings. It's just something that I haven't, I don't want to say codified, but haven't set into a motion. But given the fact that this is the beginning of the new mayoral term, I wanted to make sure that the expectations were there. And the reality of the situation is that once any of us start asking questions, that just tends to go down a line where deliberation happens, and it just becomes a very prolonged process from the outset. And again, there will be that opportunity for those questions to be asked when council has those questions. But thank you very much for your comments. Let's see if this can, move forward. And Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote for this motion that's on the table?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thanks very much, everyone. And so we're on to item number 24. That is the public hearing for this evening. Item 24 is consideration of modifications to the approved Westport development project and as described in our agenda. May we please have the staff report at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I will introduce John Martier, Senior Planner from Community Development.
Yes, thank you, Diane and Mayor and Council for the introduction. And yes, we are. I will be presenting the staff report for the project. As the mayor already read the subject of the project, I'll just dive right in. This is a continuation from the item on December 7th. And again, Council had continued the item to today, December 21, 2020, with a direction on 3 points for the application. One is to place a dining facility at a different location in the building, so the ground floor retail portion can be maintained. Explore potential for one of the townhome or row houses to be a BMR unit, and the third direction was to explore extending the subterranean garage back under building 2. So project data table, as was included in the staff report, really quick. Just you see 3 columns here. The first one was approved in August 2020 for the original project. The second was what was presented to council for consideration on December 7th. And the third is the revised proposal. Most of the items have remained unchanged between what happened earlier this month, what was presented earlier this month and today. A couple of the significant changes, though. One is that the retail was returned to 17,600 square feet for building 1 for a combined 20,000 square feet throughout the project. The applicant was able to redesign the bottom floor to accommodate the 17,600 square feet, as we'll go over in the next few slides. And that also returned to, they added about 30 parking spaces back to the overall count for the total parking supply to be 179. So the addition of retail. So the applicant was able to add 3,500 square feet of retail to the sickle portion of the building, which is facing Mary Avenue, which moved the parking ramp to be not facing on the Mary Avenue side of the building, but rather under the central green. What this also did was approximately the approximate square footage facing Stevens Creek is 14,100 square feet, which is an addition of 4,100 square feet of retail from what the approved project was. And instead of reducing the parking count by 32, so the reduced parking count for the original approval in August is 32 instead of 62, as was presented earlier this month again. So this is a comparison of what was approved in August 2020 to what's being presented tonight. As you can see, this was the loading dock and parking access on the upper part of the sickle portion of the building facing Mary Avenue. And as you can see, as presented earlier this month, the restaurant that was facing Mary Avenue is now proposed to be, again, it continues to be proposed to be private dining for the residents of building 1. However, the applicant was able to redesign the bottom floor to accommodate 3,500 square feet of retail on the northern portion of this sickle portion of the building facing Mary Avenue, reducing the size of the loading dock and the trash enclosure area, and moving the entrance to the garage under the central green. What this also did do was the applicant was also intensified the retail frontage along Stevens Creek Boulevard. So you can see, instead of having 10,000 square feet of retail along Stevens Creek Boulevard, now they have 14,000 square foot of retail as well. One of the other issues that was brought up on December 7th and discussed in our staff report was the continued issue of the comparability between the BMR unit mix and sizes, and the building one unit mix and sizes of the assisted living facility. No change has been proposed from the December 7th meeting. Again, the BMR manual does just this slide just reiterates the BMR manual's comparability, and the underlying portion that the unit type, number of bedrooms per unit are part of that comparability. And this is at the discretion of council. Again, the building one physical modifications, not much has changed. One slight change, however, was that the increasing depth of the sickle portion as presented on December 7th was 5.5 feet. This time around it's 8 feet wider, and I can show you this right here. You can see the width of the sickle portion would be 63 feet as originally approved. What's being proposed is now 71.5 feet. And again, how does this affect the common open space? Well, what's required in terms of the heart of the city specific plan would be 38,850 square feet. What was entitled originally was 44,945 square feet, and what is proposed, again, is just a reduction of about 845 square feet. Still well above what's required per the heart of the city specific plan. Again, the environmental review, there's no major changes as anticipated from what the original EIR had analyzed. Again, as similar to and consistent with the December 7th presentation, staff gave the council two options. One is to deny the project based on certain findings, and the other was to approve the project based on certain findings. Again, this is on the sole discretion of council. The next step is that the city council's decision will be final unless reconsidered within 10 days of the decision. And that ends my presentation, and I believe the applicant does have a presentation of their own, which they could probably get more in depth on the operability of the building, as well as background on their changes.
Okay, thank you, Jean. And from the applicant, can someone let us know who will be speaking, and just for, just for our understanding about how long the applicant's presentation is going to be?
Can you hear me? This is Matt Whitty from Related Atria.
Yes, welcome.
Myself and Mark Alexander, also from Atria Related, will be speaking. We'll be as brief as we can. I think John Martier gave a pretty good summation of the issues, but there are a couple of nuances that we'd like to bring to the attention of the council. So next slide, please. So when we appeared 2 weeks ago, we heard some very specific concerns raised by several council members. We've had the opportunity to engage with some council members to further explore how we might address those issues. And we're very pleased to say that we think we've made the building and the project significantly better by incorporating a number of revisions to what you saw 2 weeks ago, and really think that the project at this point could become a very, very important and exciting addition to the city. So one of the issues that was raised was the question of the ground floor of the building being more community-oriented, more collaborative with adjoining uses. And what this diagram here shows with the green arrows, I think some of you have seen this before, is how the project will attract people from outside the project into the central green. But very importantly, the connection between the senior center to the east of us and De Anza College to the south of us is something that I want to focus on. Next slide, please. So Jean showed you these slides, or a version of these slides earlier. What was on the left here is what was approved in 2020. What is in the middle is what we presented 2 weeks ago. And on the right are the final revisions that we've made to try to address, first of all, comments about the importance of retail and retaining the original 20,000 square feet that was entitled in 2020. What we are proposing at this point does exactly that, but how it does it, I think, is very important. We've created a paseo through the center of the retail along Stevens Creek, which allows the public at large coming either from the bus stop, which will be moved right in front of the building and almost literally right in front of this paseo, De Anza College students or others coming to this part of the city by bus, to access the central green while passing through retail. And while we don't have retail tenants today lined up, of course, we've designed the retail in such a way that it can be subdivided into smaller spaces. And we think that that is exactly what the community wants and needs, is a variety of retail. And the most important thing in this retail challenged era to attracting a variety of tenants is flexibility. And so what you see here is 17,600 square feet of the 20,000 square feet. The other 2,400 is in building 2, which we have no control over, but it's part of the project. And we've broken it down into essentially 3 different blocks that can then be further subdivided. Importantly, this paseo will allow the retail along Stevens Creek to be not as deep as it otherwise would be, and deep retail is harder to lease. And an additional benefit is that this retail can be broken into smaller spaces, some of which will orient onto the green, some of which will orient onto Stevens Creek, or in theory, it could be one larger piece on the corner that orients both ways. But importantly, it will activate both the Stevens Creek frontage along the sidewalk and the Stevens Creek face on the north. I want to talk about very important other addition, which is up here on the north quadrant along the Sickle, where we've added 3,500 square feet of retail. And one of the retail uses that we think would be very additive to this project is a medical or rehabilitation type retail use that would attract seniors and others from outside the project. An important component of that type of use is immediate access to parking. And so by locating the retail where we have up here, or this piece of the retail, there's parking spaces immediately adjacent to it. And I think, once again, it will enhance the project beyond just the residents within our building and in the townhouses, and be an attraction to the larger Cupertino community. In addition, I want to talk about bring to the attention of the council how the green itself can be used as a multi-purpose space. We've shown here outdoor dining in front of our residents' dining, and we hope that will draw some of our residents, the more mobile residents, to be outside from time to time. But we also have outdoor dining on the north side of the retail. And this is an ideal opportunity to integrate multi-generation residents of Cupertino. And one of our, as you may recall from my last presentation, one of our fundamental operating objectives is to not isolate our residents. And so one of the reasons we've insisted on keeping our residential dining on the ground floor as opposed to moving it elsewhere in the building is this is really the only way to prevent those residents from being isolated. This central green could also be used for children that are coming perhaps to visit their grandparents, or perhaps they're just members of the community at large. Yes, there is a large memorial park nearby, but within this central green space, we would hope to have some, I'm not sure exactly how it will be designed, but some sort of opportunity for small children to play while their parents are having lunch or having a coffee or what have you. Next slide, please. Now, another issue that was raised is this question of how the senior center visitors can access the Central Green. And importantly, the suggestion had previously been made that the best way for that to happen is what is shown here in the yellow line, essentially going out the back of the senior center, through the parking lot, crossing over on the curved section of Mary Avenue at a crosswalk that is not controlled by a traffic light and is somewhat dangerous, through our parking lot and somehow in through our building. Well, in discussing this with actual representatives of the senior center, they pointed out that the senior center does in fact have a front door that goes out to Stevens Creek, which at the moment isn't used because there's not much reason to. But with this project happening and there being a traffic light controlled crosswalk at Mary Avenue and Stevens Creek, as shown by the green line, and now the addition of the paseo through our building, it's in fact a much more direct, shorter, and safer route for for visitors of the senior center to access the retail and also the Central Green. So I think these are significant improvements that came about in response to some of the challenges that your council gave us. I'd also want to comment on De Anza College, and there are a number of areas in which we think we can collaborate with this very important member of the community. I'm going to defer to my colleague Mark Alexander to talk about that.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for having us, Mayor and council members. Yeah, I think we've talked recently with President Lloyd Holmes and the Vice President of Instruction, Christina Espinosa Peeb at De Anza College, and really believe there's a lot of great programming opportunities between the two, between our assisted living community and between De Anza, whether that's through internships, through actually certifications, and obviously permanent job placement. But we talked a lot about nursing and gerontology nursing specifically, but there actually are quite a few other programs at the college that likely would be potential either internships or job placement opportunities, whether that be in building engineering or building operations. So I think, we feel like there's a great synergy between what we have done in other communities, but also what this site provides with the access to the senior center and bringing in sort of real activity, a new hub that can be activated across generations is pretty special. So we feel really good about that and had a great conversation. I'd like to continue that conversation if this project gets approved. So
continuing on with some of the other changes that we've considered, there have been some suggestions made by some in the community about the use of, go back to the prior slide, please, Cascade, about the use of the central green for other functions. And we very much see this space as a communal space beyond just the benefit of those in the Westport Cupertino project. One suggestion was potentially for a farmer's market. And while it's a somewhat limited in size, I think that is a very reasonable and legitimate potential use. And to the extent that it could be made to work there, I think it would typically happen on weekends. The parking for that could potentially occur at De Anza College, which is not as active on weekends. And again, we're looking for ways to integrate and draw in the community to different parts of our project where we can, while at the same time respecting the legal and regulatory constraints that are imposed on a building of this type. And again, I'd like to defer to Mark Alexander just briefly to walk the public and the council through, what this particular building is designed to accomplish, who it's designed for, and how it operates.
yeah, I think thanks, Matt. Again, just assisted living is licensed by the Department of Social Services in California. Will be licensed as a residential center for the elderly, and basic services. What's neat about this entire development is you have the senior housing, BMR housing, right across the way, but we have our product is very different because we have our basic services are that's included in your rent are 3 meals a day, including snacks, housekeeping, including personal laundry and linens. Transportation, that's another great benefit of our project is our services include scheduled transportation to all local appointments, which also means our use is a low impact use as it relates to parking and traffic, because most of our residents use that transportation, and actually typically between 5, maybe 10% is on the high side, have cars and actually use them. Again, basic services also includes security. It includes 24-hour emergency alert services. It includes obviously upkeep, housekeeping, maintenance. Utilities are included. So it's a full package and suite of services. And perhaps the most important, and why we were so insistent on keeping the dining on the first floor, is social engagement. And people, one of our mottos is people belong together, which has been harder in COVID, but it's only shown us more since we've been growing. Actually, post COVID, our company's been growing all across the country, because people really do belong together as opposed to being alone, in our opinion. And doing that in social settings and doing it in intergenerational settings, we believe is just a recipe for a better life. And that's why we think this community and this site and what's being proposed is really an outstanding opportunity for for us to help make seniors' lives better, but also for the city of Cupertino and to have a something they can be proud of, as well as offer lots of great jobs and lots of and a new hub of activity for this site.
Couple of other points I'd like to make, Mayor Paul and council members, that were raised last week. The question had come up: why was the parking under the BMR building removed? And as I pointed out last week, we had nothing to do with that decision, and that ship has sailed. That transaction has concluded, and I understand Pacific Communities has pulled building permits. I don't know if he's available tonight, but Mike Kelly, developer of that building, was available to talk about their experience managing many senior affordable buildings in California and the relationship of parking. One other thing I did want to point out is, as you see highlighted in red, there are a number of surface spaces parked right in front of the BMR building. And one suggestion we've made to Mike is that these spaces have a time limit on them of, say, 30 minutes, so that they're not taken up by residents as permanent parking who should be parking in our garage, but rather are available to drop off and load and unload. And so that's a suggestion I think he's taken under advisement. Mike, I don't know if you're on the call, but if you are, please feel free to comment on your experience with senior affordable parking requirements.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Matt. Thanks. Hello, everybody. Mike Kelly with the Pacific Companies. Yeah, just to back up a little bit, I was not at the previous meeting when the suggestion had been made to further explore moving the subterranean back under the BMR building. So the main reason for that, probably 7 or 8 months ago, was that the primary source of financing, which is the federal tax credit, through the Tax Credit Allocation Committee, requires that we pull full building permits within 180 days of receiving an allocation. And so, as you guys know, we visited a number of times and visited with staff and planning commission and city council, and went through the parking plan, at length to move it out from underneath to allow for that possibility to take place should we be awarded. And we have been awarded, as you know, and we received our financing, and we've closed our financing just last week, roughly $40 million, and we've pulled full building permits. So we anticipate breaking ground next week, or the following week at the latest. But we're very comfortable with that decision to move the parking out from underneath us and just, roughly 190 to 200 feet away, because the seniors now have covered parking, secure parking, and I'd say the vast majority of our senior projects, we have probably 40 or 50 of them, and we have 17,000 units, are at grade parking. So, for them to have covered parking, albeit 200 feet away, is really a great deal for them. It's great for us. It's good from a management standpoint. So, so we're very comfortable with that, from an operational standpoint, and it's certainly we view that as an amenity, and so I'm happy to answer any questions. But it's certainly it's an amenity in our view, and we're happy to report that we are breaking ground in a week or two.
Thank you, Mike. One other point that was raised, and then we'll be done, Mayor Paul, with our presentation, had to do with the unit mix. And if we go to that slide there, nothing's really changed there. We fundamentally believe that, and it's certainly the council's discretion to decide, that the trade-off, if you will, of adding 8 memory care units, but not increasing the total number of units, the only negative of that is that those memory care units do not count as residential units because they don't have full kitchens. And so there are 8 less units that would be available to contribute towards the city's RHNA requirements. And while that is not desirable, the ratio of 8 essentially apartments, 8 less apartments, what the city or the code would consider residential units, against a much larger denominator, versus adding 8 memory care units to a market that is dramatically undersupplied and is not going to be, those units are not going to be produced anywhere else in Cupertino in the foreseeable future. We think that's a trade-off worth making. And then the other issue had to do with the unit mix itself. And while it is true that the proposed unit mix in our building has varied slightly from what was proposed a year or so ago, that's been done solely because of the feedback we've had from the market and from the community. And there are many members of the senior community that we've engaged with, and some of them I think may be available tonight to talk about the reasons why two-bedroom units are in such demand and frankly in short supply. So again, a decision for the council to make. I think it is legally within we've been advised it is legally within your purview to make the decision that these are quote unquote comparable. If you don't make that decision, I think it's a great disservice to the senior community who will be the ones who will suffer. So with that, I'll stop and we'll be available for questions.
Okay, thank you everyone from staff and the applicant. At this point, I'm going to move it over to the public for any comments or questions that they may have. I will remind members of the public that you will have 3 minutes to speak. You'll need to have your hand raised by the time that the first public commenter is done. I will remind our staff as well as applicant representatives to be taking down questions, and if you want to respond to comments from the public as well, you'll have that opportunity to do so after the final member of the public is done speaking. Right now, I have 4 hands raised from the public. They are from Andrew Wong, Richard Adler, Jean Bedord, Connie Cunningham, and as I was speaking, David Stearns as well raised his hand. And so each of you will have 3 minutes, Joseph Way as well at this point. Andrew, welcome, and you may begin.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, for introducing me. I want to ask, what are the sort of landscaping design choices that you're going to make in the green area? I see there's a map and there's not really much detail on it. But I was wondering, like, has this been planned? Is there, like, who do I go to find out, like, what shrubbery, what trees are being used to plant over there?
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I'm sure that staff and the applicants have made note of your question, and we'll address this after our final speaker from the public. So in addition to the speakers that we had that I indicated before, we now have 2 additional ones. They are Peggy Griffin and Janet Van Zoren will be concluding our speakers this evening. Our next speaker is Richard Adler. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, well.
Very good, thanks. My name is Richard Adler, and thank you for letting me speak. I'm chairman of Age-Friendly Cupertino. Back in 2018, the city of Cupertino, with the support from the city, applied to the World Health Organization to be officially designated as an age-friendly city, and we did receive that designation. Now, what that means to be designated as age-friendly doesn't mean the city has reached the goal of being completely age-friendly, but rather the city has committed itself to a goal of working toward becoming more age-friendly by identifying the needs of the city's older residents and working conscientiously to address those needs. And as required by that application process, we did a survey of the city's older population about their most important priorities and concerns, and the result was that the #1 priority expressed by the citizens was to provide more appropriate and affordable housing for senior population. My belief is that this proposed Atria project and the below market rate combined represent the first major addition to senior housing in Cupertino in many years. There are 3 large senior housing facilities in the city now. There's Sunnyview and the Forum, which are CCRCs, and Shadow Cupertino, which offers rental apartments. Sunnyview is 50 years old. The Forum and Shadow Cupertino are more than 30 years old. So we really have not had a major senior housing project in Cupertino in more than 30 years. So this is a big opportunity. My belief is that this Atria facility would not only add a substantial amount of senior housing units, over 200, would offer an alternative for seniors that does not currently exist in Cupertino. a rental community that offers independent living, assisted living for seniors that need help with activities of daily living, and probably most important, memory care. Now, I understand the council has been concerned with the retail issue and the retail space that's going to be included with this project, and it's a real issue. But I really have not ever heard that Cupertino is suffering from a serious shortage of retail, but it is suffering from a really felt shortage of senior housing. I think this project really addresses that need, and I hope that the city council will see fit to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Our next speaker is, I have it as Jean Bedord. Welcome, Jean.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and council members. I am Jean Bedord, and I'm a longtime Cupertino resident. Tonight, I'm speaking to you as president of the Cupertino Senior Center Advisory Council. The approximately 1,200 members of the Senior Center care deeply about it. But the center is too small for the number of seniors in the city, and that limits its services. Approval of the Westport Assisted Living Project would provide significant benefits to the Senior Center and its members. Now, what I hear from members over and over again is that they want to go to a class at the Senior Center, then go have coffee or tea or lunch with their friends. The Coffee Society was deeply beloved by seniors as well as De Anza's students. We need a replacement. And this new improved Westport project has space for a cafe with outdoor dining directly across the street from the Senior Center. Our seniors have no real interest in shopping. They just want to have something to eat and socialize. Our conversations are about getting rid of the stuff that clutters our lives. Our senior members also want the option of having assisted living in the community so they can keep their friends. My mother-in-law had to move to 3 different facilities as she required more care, so she lost contact with friends each time. Westport provides the range of care so that friends can move in across the street and perhaps even stay active at the Senior Center because they don't need a car. Now, let me remind Council that defining a senior strategy was one of the top 10 projects on the city work plan for this year. The city did an extensive survey of senior resources, with housing as one of the 5 areas to be addressed. The Westport project addresses that need. The location also addresses the need for transportation with a bus stop for the Senior Center and De Anza students. I do have an ask for the city. The front of the Senior Center needs to be activated so seniors can cross the street safely at the stoplight instead of mid-block, a major safety hazard. This needs to be addressed as a CIP project or in the Memorial Park Master Plan. I urge you to approve this new and significantly improved project, which meets the needs of seniors in our community. The city needs to take action now to get senior housing actually built. We are getting older. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Our next speaker is Connie Cunningham. Welcome, Connie.
Oh, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I am Connie Cunningham, a 34-year resident. I'm currently serving as chair of the Housing Commission, speaking for myself only. I am supportive of this modification by Atria to Westport Cupertino. Westport Atria moves Cupertino toward its senior strategy, which is one of Cupertino's top 10 priority items on the FY 2021-22 City Work Program. This project provides a much-needed number of homes of differing income levels, ages, and health needs. 267 total, with 88 market-rate row house townhomes, 48 below-market-rate senior apartments, and 158 other senior homes. The 48 senior below-market-rate rental homes are a significant addition to the mix of homes available to seniors. This design adds much-needed assisted living senior rental apartments and a memory care facility. Housing is one major issue of the city's senior strategy. The first step of that work program item was to issue the online Senior Resource Availability Survey, otherwise known as the Senior Survey, that went live in October and closed recently. Significant resources were invested in this survey. I'm impressed by Westport's responses to council questions from December 7th. The retail is increased, surface parking is increased, and the height is reduced for Building 1. Westport project as a whole creates an intergenerational neighborhood. The location has many benefits: access to transportation, businesses, the senior center, and De Anza College. This housing will keep seniors in a diverse community of ages, which is important for retaining social connections and mental health. I'm pleased to see that the Westport design includes a big improvement for safety for seniors crossing from the senior center to dining and stores. It is shorter and more visible to drivers than the crosswalk on the curb farther north on Mary Avenue. And there is such a definite synergy with De Anza College. De Anza provides lifelong learning for all residents, while Westport offers coffee shops and places to relax for students. I like this design for an interconnected community. All ages of people using the central green, the cafes, the stores, the adjacent senior center in De Anza. It can be accessed on foot, on bicycle, by car, or by bus. It is a thoughtful design that creates an interconnected neighborhood in the heart of the city. These homes, shops, and open space are designed in a way that makes this a destination for other Cupertino residents and the surrounding community. In closing, I urge you to approve this thoughtful design tonight and begin New Year 2022 by filling a critical housing need for Cupertino and a big step forward on the FY 2021-22 City Work Program for Senior Strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Our next speaker is David Stearns. Welcome, David. David, you'll need to unmute yourself in order to be heard. Okay, we're not hearing from David. David, we'll attempt to come back to you later. Let us go to Joseph Way. Welcome, Joseph.
Okay. Hi, my name is Joseph Way, and I live in Cupertino since 1996. And I moved my family to Boston after extensive search because of the location of Cupertino with good school system and the in the city. That's why we chose to Cupertino. Another reason is that my parents decided to retire from Hong Kong, and they chose the city of Mountain View, where they lived, where my mother still lived until today, and my dad passed away about 9 years ago at the age of 90. They enjoyed their life in Mountain View because the city is age-friendly with a senior center and a lot of local services and transportation and other types of support. My wife and I actually recently relocated my mother-in-law from China to Cupertino about 8 years ago, and we chose the Chateau for independent living because therefore we're close by with her. Unfortunately, we have to move my mother-in-law to Mountain View to assisted living, as there's no availability for assisted living available in Cupertino in such a short amount of time that we need to find a place for her. And my wife and I also prefer to age at home in Cupertino, but our experience with caring for our parents taught us that eventually we will also see senior housing with different levels of services. And in reality, people are living longer all over the world, and Cupertino is no different. So I urge the city to start thinking much further down the road. I know the issue of aging, it does not wait. So some of the solution, we cannot wait for a perfect solution to implement. So, but right now we have a situation where we all have parents or grandparents that we need to find solution to care for them. And eventually, 10, 20 years down the road, I'm also looking out for myself. So that's my statement for tonight. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Joseph. Let's try to go back to David Stearns. David, welcome.
some reason I was asked to unmute. I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't the right person.
Okay, let me go ahead
This is
and
Richard Adler.
unmute you, Richard. So David, I have unmuted you, but I'm not,
Oh, how about now?
yes, now we can
Oh.
hear you.
I'll be darned. The mysteries of an iPad. Hey, I've been living in Cupertino for over 40 years and living at the Forum Rancho San Antonio for the last 6, where I've been a board member. And I'm also a member of Age Friendly Cupertino. I would like to add my voice to those people who spoke tonight to ask for approval of the Westport project. I think it's pretty good. I like the senior housing component a lot. Especially, I like the memory care and assisted living in the Atria building. At the Forum, we recently enlarged our memory care and our assisted living because of the census of our own people here. We got 500 people who are entering at a later age than we expected them to 30 years ago. And as a result, we need more memory care and assisted living. So I think Cupertino is seeing exactly the same phenomena. And Westport adds to the stock of housing and care for people who need assisted living and memory care. The city population is aging, as several people have mentioned tonight, and older people need assistance and unfortunately memory care. And I know, gee, too many friends, living in Cupertino and Los Altos and surrounding cities who are trying to age in place, not doing the best job. And when it's a couple and one of the members gets memory problems or has an accident, they really need a place like this. So I recommend you approve it. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the City Council and the Westport Group for returning the agreed upon 20,000 square feet of retail and adjusting the parking. I have 2 questions. Here below, you see the plan, and there's something called a wandering garden. And I think that with the wandering garden and also the increased width, that the public space has significantly been reduced. So I'd like somebody to explain this wandering garden. Is it on the ground floor? Is it above? Is it publicly accessible? Also, my second question is, in the staff report, it says the applicant is continuing to modify building 1. So what are you approving if the plans aren't final? How much can it change without the council review? I do not think the BMR units are comparable. So if you approve this project, please be clear in your resolution that it's not comparable. So future projects can have a heads up. I do like this compromise solution, and I would agree that this should proceed, but I'd like my questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Our next and last speaker is Janet Van Zoren, with apologies, Stephen Scharf. You simply didn't get the hand up quickly enough. And so, Janet, welcome.
Hello. I'm a long-term resident of Cupertino and also a senior, and I urge you to approve the Westport project. Most of my reasons for asking you to do so have just been stated by others, so I'll not restate them now. Please approve this project.
Thank you, Janet. And you win the award for concise public comment of the evening thus far. And so let's go ahead and bring it back to our staff as well as the applicant representatives. And as I stated from the outset of this item, let's go ahead and ask staff and the applicant to respond to some of the questions and as needed, follow up to the comments by the members of the public. I do see.
This is Matt Whitty.
Yeah, okay. So I see hand raised.
I'm happy to answer.
All right. Let me go first, and then we won't talk over each other. So Matt Whitty had his hand raised. We had the applicant representatives as well as a few from staff. So why don't we do this? Why don't we visit staff first? Perhaps some of those questions can be clarified. Would anyone from staff like to address any of the public comments at this point?
Sure, I can go through a few of them if you don't mind. There's a comment from the member of the public. The first one, I believe, was about the landscaping in the middle, the central green. The original intent of the landscape green has not changed since August 2020. Again, it's landscape greens, one of the few areas of the Westport development which will have turf as which staff was under the impression would be kind of a seating area, a gathering area, and whatnot. A lot of the trees in that area are proposed to be date palms, and with a mix of drought-tolerant plantings along the edges of the building. Of course, the front of the building along Stevens Creek Boulevard is going to be consistent with the Heart of the City specific plan, with kind of like an oak, but with coast live oaks with the public right of way and on the frontage of the buildings as well. Any landscaping in general would have to meet the city's water efficient landscape ordinance. That includes timers and even the selection of plantings itself. In terms of, do you want to keep going, Mayor?
Please. I mean, if you can get those
Sure.
questions answered from staff, we'll just go sequentially if anyone else
Sure.
has comment from staff, and then we'll go over to the applicant to follow up for public comments and questions.
Sure. My understanding about the Wandering Garden was that it's, as stated, it's above the central green, which would substitute for the memory care balcony, the private open space for them. Again, the applicant could clarify if I've interpreted that correctly or not. So in that case, it's not. I don't believe it's taken away from the central green. Rather, it's kind of a privately accessible just to the memory care units on the second floor. In terms of the continuing to modify, that was probably just semantics with the staff report. There has been no indication that after this modification that the applicant would propose any further modifications to the project. So if that was anything that was misleading to the public, I do apologize for my bad English in writing it. That was not intended. And I believe that's the last question from the I think that was pretty much it in terms of questions from the public, and if the applicant through the mayor can elaborate any of those.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was quite comprehensive based upon my own notes as well. Does anyone from staff have anything to add to what Jean Martyr was stating in follow-up to the public comments? I don't see any hands raised at this point. So let me go to our applicant representatives. So at this point, does anyone from the applicant have follow-ups to what the members of the public raised in their questions or as needed, their comments? And we'll just go by hands on Zoom. Sorry, go ahead. I heard somebody start to speak. Was it Mark?
Mayor Paul, I just confirming what Jean said regarding the Wandering Garden. That's just a moniker that we use for a secured outdoor space for our memory care residents. It is on the second floor. And it will be off of kind of their main living and activity area, and that particular location makes more sense. It actually will provide some nice shade as well for those residents dining below, but it's exclusively for the use of the memory care residents. And so I was just confirming what Gian said.
Okay, understood. Anyone else from the applicant like to follow up on items from our members of the public? Okay, seeing nobody, I will now open this up to the council, and this will be the portion where we will be asking questions of staff as well as the applicant. I will repeat, this is not a portion where the hearing is closed. The hearing is still open. Well, we've had the opportunity to hear the presentations as well as members of the public and the follow-ons from our staff and the representatives from the applicant. And so now we have this opportunity to have our council questions raised. And so keeping track of time, it's 11:09 right now. I think we're having a good, robust item at this point. but I will try to keep us on track time-wise without getting draconian about it. Councilmember Willie, you have a hand raised for a question?
Yeah, so I do have a question. I'll temper it first, though, that I do like the improvements that I'm seeing. The question that I've got is kind of a carryover from the previous one. It's about the hydraulic lift parking that's on the underneath of the main building there. And what percentage of the parking is going to be using this new style of parking? I have this vision after that previous meeting that we had that the only people that could use those hydraulics would be the attendants. Would the non-hydraulic parking area still be allowed for people to come and go with their own parking? Maybe you could even show a picture that you showed the last time that showed how cars get elevated and then cars are parked underneath.
Okay, great. Who's that directed to, Councilmember Willie, in terms of the request to?
I think Matt's probably the best one.
Through the mayor and Councilmember, let me share my screen because I actually have the picture what the applicant has sent me, if that's okay. And then I can allow the applicant to discuss the details of the parking arrangement.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
We can see this. Yes.
Okay, so I think the applicant should be responding to this, right, Matt?
And Matt, if you're speaking, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Yes, sorry, can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Yes.
So Councilman Willie, you're correct that the stackers, as we call them, the hydraulic lift parking section of the garage will be manned by a valet, and the use of that of those spaces is primarily for the benefit of the residents, their guests, and the staff. And so the way this will work is that anybody using that portion of the garage will drop their car off in front of the building in the drop-off zone off of Mary Avenue. A valet will then take the car down into the garage and park it. And when that person wants their car back, they'll tell the valet and they'll come get it, and they'll be driven and dropped off where they left it in front of the building. So the stackers are not being used by individuals. The other portions of the garage, and importantly, all of the BMR portions of the garage, are self-parked. Do not require the use of a valet. And then, of course, all the surface parking spaces up above are self-parked, which are primarily the retail parking spaces. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So how many of the parking spaces are stacker spaces versus the self-park spaces?
I'll have to defer to one of my colleagues to answer that question. I don't know off the top of my head, but Cascade, can you pull up a slide? Where's that?
So John,
maybe you can just answer it.
Okay. Does anyone have that data handy?
I believe the stackers are 76 of the spaces. I'm sorry, there's 76 stackers spaces in terms of just so that would be 33 spaces which would accommodate 76 cars to be parked with the 80 residential required spaces. For those, the other 4 would be handicap, which are non-stacker. And please correct me if I'm wrong on that point.
No, I think you're right. What this drawing shows, John, is and Councilman Willie, is that the white spaces are the stackers, the blue spaces are the BMR self-park spaces, and the orange spaces are also self-park spaces. And the whole concept of this is that very few of our residents drive. I think Mark Alexander mentioned that in their experience, and they've managed over 400 of these facilities around the country, approximately 10% or less of the residents own cars. So of the 158 units, 35 of them are proposed to be memory care. They definitely do not own cars. That leaves approximately 123. And so you're talking about maybe 12 to 15 cars. There are going to be a lot of other cars here, a lot of other spaces in these stackers available for staff, for visitors. And to the extent that you have a special event, that garage would be available for the public at large, but they'd have to use a valet.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Woolley. And just as a time check, that was about 5 minutes. I'll allocate roughly the same amount for councils for questions for this first round. I want this to be a complete discussion. We have Vice Mayor Chow, followed by Councilmember Moore. Just a quick time check, it's 11:15 right now, followed by Councilmember Way. Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. This is, I believe, is the second floor. So the first floor is retail. The second floor.
And Vice Mayor Chow, I'm just going to remind you that we're at questions at this point, so make sure that this is directed towards questions. Thank you.
So this MC Terrace is the part where you are saying it's a wandering garden for the memory care unit, right? And then underneath will be the outdoor dining area in the first floor. And this is so this part that's wandering garden is actually you are saying there will be shade for the outdoor dining. Is that right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Good design. So I am confused. There is the retail because the plan set says retail on the top. The new corner is 3,000 square foot, but the staff report mentioned the 35. Staff presentation said 3,500 square foot, and I think Atria also mentioned 3,500 square foot. So is that part 3,000 or 3,500?
It's 3,000 plus the 500 that is shown colored blue outside in other words, in the under the arcade.
500 is outside. What does that mean? Is that an outdoor or indoor?
It's indoor, and the wall would be moved out to the edge of the building there. So we would be incorporating that section.
I see. So this part
so we're trying to get to the 17,600 square foot number exactly. And
I see.
That was the way we could do it. And we think that will work fine for a medical or rehabilitation use.
Okay. And then for the bottom part, I see this two space, and this is from the plan set. It does add up to 14,100. But in the graph that you show in your presentation, that's further divided, it adds up to 14,000. There is 100 square foot less.
I, with all due respect, I honestly don't know, but I understand the objective, and we'll do everything humanly possible to make the spaces subdividable, because that was a recommendation by some of the other council members. And we'll try to show you how it is exactly 14,100, but I don't know. Looking at your drawing, I can't say.
Okay.
It's possible that the Paseo took some of that square footage.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for making the effort for to provide as much retail. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. So you're right under about a couple of those original 5 minutes left. We'll have Councilmember Moore, followed by Councilmember Way.
Actually, if Vice Mayor could continue to screen share, I believe that's who's sharing right now, that the floor plan. Vice Mayor Chow, can you, yes, actually, that's perfect. Okay, so my first question has to deal with the ADA parking requirements. So the retail that you have on the north side, the 3,000 square feet, does not have adjacent ADA parking stalls, and yet you're trying to make that senior medical facilities. So the shortest path is all the way down to the EV van parking to the east. so I don't think we should be trying to design this during Zoom, but I'm seeing an issue there with regards to ADA parking, and I don't know how you're going to remedy that. There's also some issues with regards to the application requirements, 19.56.060. B1. I'd like to know where the summary table they're referencing is, and for the site plan, I don't see how the density bonus units have been labeled and tabulated for me to be able to follow where those units are. So that part seems incomplete. So I'm wondering why this hasn't been sent to the Planning Commission, particularly with regards to the parking. The Municipal Code Section 19.124.050C seems to indicate that there need to be findings and exceptions made that is in the purview of the Planning Commission. And given the number of changes here, I'd like staff to let us know if we are able to send this to the Planning Commission to review, since the changes are so extensive. And lastly, we had a tentative map showing underground parking underneath the BMR building and the senior market rate units. So how do we now alter our final map to show the easements that are needed for the senior parking, which is the senior BMR parking, which needs to be accessed in the separate building? I'm going to assume you need an egress kind of easement there to go with the property. So mostly I need to know why this didn't go to the Planning Commission, and what are our rights to have it go to the Planning Commission to have a thorough review on the items I just mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, great. That's exactly half your 5 minutes. So let me start with staff, same order, post public comment. Please attempt to answer as many of Councilmember Moore's questions as you can, and then we'll go to the applicant for follow-up to that. Chris, you have your microphone on, so did you want to say?
Yeah, so I can answer some of the questions, I think. So with respect to any changes to the subdivision map, any reciprocal easements between the parcels wouldn't necessarily be public access easements that would require a modification of the final map. So this, with respect to the Planning Commission's role, the director under the code has discretion to refer a project to a higher body, the Director of Community Development, and in this case, the decision was referred to the City Council. The Planning Commission could instruct the Community Development Director to refer this matter to the Planning Commission for further deliberations. That is within your discretion.
I think you meant that the City Council could direct a director to refer it to the Planning Commission.
Yes, I did. Thank you for correcting me there. And then with respect to the questions regarding ADA parking, I think perhaps the applicant team is best placed to answer how they're addressing those questions.
Okay, I take it no one else from the staff. Matt, what do you have your hand raised? Did you want to follow up on?
Through the mayor's John Martier,
Yes, John,
just to answer Councilmember Moore's comments about the identification of density bonus units on sheets. Oh gosh, A25, and let me share my screen really quick. They did at the request of staff refer to density bonus units on this sheet. These sheets right here, all 60. I believe there's 22 units altogether, density bonus units. So all 16 on level 6 are considered density bonus units, and 6 of the 7 front-facing units on level 5 are considered the density bonus units per the applicant. And this is consistent with the original approval that the top 2 floors would be on building 1 would be the ones that were considered the density bonus units.
Okay, thank you, Jean Martier. That does leave the question regarding the ADA parking units. Would anyone from the applicant like to take that on, or?
Sure, sure. Yeah, very quickly, we don't know what the use of that 3,500 square feet is going to be. I suggested that among the uses that we think would be good could be medical uses. And if in fact it ended up being a rehabilitation facility, We, of course, would locate the ADA parking adjacent to it. But it's premature. We don't know in the 17,600 square feet who's going to go where at this point. And obviously, we'll meet whatever requirements the particular use dictates.
Councilmember Moore, since this was your question, very brief follow-up. Your hand is back up. Did you want to follow up on that?
Sure. Even if it's not medical use, it would require the ADA parking to be the shortest path to the door. And that's the same with the other retail uses, which you're showing along Stevens Creek Boulevard.
Yeah, I guess I should also, sorry to jump in. I should also just clarify that that accessible parking is regulated under the building code, under Chapter 11A of the building code. And so, I mean, those issues would be inspected, addressed, and, you know, and confirmed before any building permits were issued. It doesn't mean that they're not necessarily thinking about it at the planning stage, but it is a building standard issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, let's, in the interest of time, you know, I went ahead and allocated a minute over for that quick follow-up, but let's go to Councilmember Way, who's been patiently waiting. And so Councilmember Way, questions of the applicant or of staff?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul. I have met with the city staff and the applicant to understand a lot of things, so I asked my questions, but I do want to repeat this question. The central lawn is a very essential part of this building, so that this project, because it integrates outside use, and the answer college students are senior students. So who exactly is managing the central lawn? That's my first question. You know, how do we get approval for outside use? For example, if we want to do a high school foundations fundraiser there, how do we go apply that? My second question is, you know, we do, thank you very much for bringing back this 17,500 or 600 square footage of retail. But in addition to that, the central lawns outside dining, that's in addition to the retail, and do we have a positive guarantee that that's going to happen, because outside dining is really very preferable right now? So that's my two questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Way. I believe that would be more directed towards the applicant than to staff. So Matthew Whitty, you have your hand raised.
Yes. So first of all, with respect to who is going to be responsible for the ongoing maintenance and governance and management of the Central Green, an organization has been created between the three different owners within Westport, Cupertino. That would be the HOA of the AVA townhomes, Pacific Communities as the owner of the 48 BMR units, and related atria of Building 1. We are the manager of that entity, but all three parties are responsible for their pro rata share of ongoing fees. So if there was a request to utilize that for a particular function, it would come to the organization that we've created, legal organization that we've created, and whoever's managing the building for us would probably be the designated manager of that organization, and that's who you would make your request to. The second, I don't recall the second question, Councilmember Way, if you could just repeat that.
It's that we have the retail for 17,600, but the outside dining is in addition to that. And, do we know is that exactly that's going to happen? Because outside dining is pretty desirable right now.
Yes, thank you. It is in addition to that. It's not included. None of the, if you look at the plan, there are tables shown in front of the resident dining and also in front of the retail. None of that square footage is included in the 17,600. So any outdoor dining would be in addition, and it is, you know, can it be guaranteed? Well, that's always a function of who's running these restaurants or cafes or what have you. And there's also the outdoor dining on the Mary Avenue side of the building that one of the members of Age Friendly Cupertino mentioned. It's very much in our intent to have as much outdoor dining as possible, but we've also heard that there's a desire to have a non-restaurant, non-food and beverage convenience stores and some other types of uses here. So I think ultimately the market will dictate, but it is very much within our goal, for all the reasons you've heard tonight, to have outdoor dining.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Way. We have approximately a little less than a minute 45 for you. I have my 4 minutes, but I'm gonna go ahead and cede it over to follow-ups from council. Vice Mayor Chow, you also have about the same amount of time as Councilmember Wei. So just trying to keep us on track. We're at 11:30 right now. I'd like to us to get to an introduced motion within the next 5 or so minutes. Councilmember Moore, you have a hand raised, and I'm going to cede part of my time over to you for those follow-ups.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. Thank you for pointing out the sentences with regarding the density bonus unit. So the additional height was not exactly needed for the density bonus units because there's about 14,000 square feet of amenity space on the 6th level, it looks like, between the spa, wellness center, fitness, yoga, lockers, theater, lounge.
More, I'm going to remind you to put your
in a form of a question. So I'm curious about the need for the extra height when I'm looking at a base project, especially given that there are no BMRs in the no density bonus units in the senior BMR building, which to me is an indicator that the additional height was not required for the density bonus in that building. And then seeing the 14,000 square feet of amenity space up on the 6th level, I'm wondering how it's justified the additional height was needed there. And this is a question for Chris regarding the concession or the waiver for extra height.
Okay, City Attorney Jensen, how would you like to address this question?
Well, so the waiver for extra height is not for council at the time. In August 2020, council made the determination that the waiver for height was all allowed and required to be allowed under the density bonus law. That I don't think there's any occasion to revisit that decision at this time. Because the applicant has provided the number of very low income units required to obtain a density bonus, they're entitled to waivers with the criteria are met, and they're entitled to a certain number of concessions based on the provision of those units.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to point out that the project actually, it qualifies to be 347 units. And
Councilmember Moore, I'm going to give you another 45 seconds of my time. I'd like to reserve a minute. But okay. I'll remind you this is questions and not comments.
Okay, so I would like to know why we are not seeing the 94 density bonus units that the project's entitled to being utilized, especially given our need to have meet these huge RHNA numbers. Can anyone give me a reason why the project is excluding them?
Well, since this is my time, I'll go ahead and interject. I think Chris gave a pretty good answer, right? I mean, the VLI units are the crux of the density bonus, and it's not required that all of the density bonus units be invoked in terms of the rest of the units that the applicant have the ability to make. I mean, whether that's good policy, whether that's good legislation, I think that's a different question, right? I mean, but I think Chris gave the heart of the answer, right? Because the legislation and the allowances are focused upon those VLI units. Okay, so Matthew, what do you have your hand raised? Did you want to follow up on any point there, or is that just an artifact?
No.
Okay, so I don't see any further hands raised from our council at this point. I'm going to go ahead and ask that we entertain a motion for discussion. And before we do that, I will formally close the public hearing. May I have a motion for the purposes of voting or for discussion on this item from council at this time? Vice Mayor Chow? Vice Mayor Chow, I'm not sure if you're muted, but if you are.
Muted. Okay. So I would move that we adopt the following resolutions to approve the project modification. One, resolution number 21-117, approving the Heart of the City exception. 2, resolution number 21-118, approving the modified development permit. 3, resolution number 21-118, approving the architectural and the site approval permit.
Vice Mayor Chow, I think you meant 21-119 for that last.
21-119.
Okay. May I have a second for this motion? Councilmember Moore, your hand is raised.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. I see that Vice Mayor Chow still has a hand raised. Did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I do wish to approve this project. However, I am still struggling a little bit because yeah, I'm really happy that at least we have almost all the same amount of retail, and the applicant has made the commitment to provide as much. However, compared with the approved project, we still get less height in the ground floor, and then we still get there are still enlarged unit size and college corridor, and then which makes the project high-end luxurious units. And plus we have reduced number of RENA when they have added 5 more extra 2 bedrooms and reduced the 14 studios. That reduced the number of RENA units, which we really need. And underground parking is improved, but still it's in a separate building. And BMR is still not inclusionary, but that's in the original approval. And just, so we are seeing every request will help the applicant to make a better, more expensive project, more luxurious for the residents to afford. So the residents are asking, what do we give in return? There has to be a give and take. So one idea that I would like to propose is I think the Cupertino really needs space for nonprofit organizations, and we need meeting spaces for the community. I'm not sure if this is a good alternative, but maybe the top end of the retail, 33,000 or 3,500 square feet. What if that's provided as a community space for nonprofit and a meeting room with free rent for the community? Would that be acceptable? But then that would be at the cost of a reduction in retail. On the other hand, we are looking at disconnected retail. So maybe a community space there would be, for example, historical society could be located there with a big enough office. Just idea to consider. I don't know what my fellow council members think about it. I don't know what the applicant think about it. Just, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. And just on a time check, you're at about 2 minutes, 40 seconds in. And so let me just give us about 3 minutes each here. Councilmember Wei, did you have follow-on comments at this time?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul. I'd like to follow up with Vice Mayor's comments. Correct me if I'm wrong, the drive for more 2 bedrooms and more memory care is driven by senior needs. It's really not to make it more luxurious or less affordable for people. Correct me if that's wrong, because according to what I've heard from our seniors in the community, this is what they need. So the atrium can definitely change it back to the original plan, but that doesn't fit our needs. So I would like to make that clear that if that's what our seniors are driven, that's what has happened. So I really don't think it's because the atrium is going to make more money or is more luxurious. So I like to make that point. Maybe somebody can follow up with that. And the second, I do believe our senior has spoken. This is a really good project for our seniors. This is what we really need. So if we hand out on those 8 units, I just feel that this project needs to go in. The 48 units of low-income housing are breaking ground. So we really need to get this going. So I do believe the developers have really accommodated our request. So just see if the change of units, add more 2-bedroom, has more memory care. Is that driven by our seniors?
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Wei. You're at 1.5 minutes. Let me go ahead and, sorry, I'm alternating between 2 computers here. I'll start my time on this. I think, let me just give some comments here. You know, I think we actually probably can't really get to the point where we're converting 3,000 or parts of 3,000 or 3,500 square feet of retail over to nonprofit meeting space. I think we could put the question out there, and you know, the applicant could take it under advisement and hopefully, you know, be able to work with staff if, you know, for example, 500 to 600 square feet could be carved out. And, you know, and hopefully in good faith it could be pursued. You know, I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm not sure that this is the kind of, you know, right sort of timing to consider it. In terms of the other parts of it, I mean, I don't think we're really getting what we asked for in terms of the last December 7th meeting, but I think it's become a better project for the public. And to that extent, I'm appreciative of the applicant's efforts, but I'm also not, you know, looking with rose-colored glasses with regard to what they're doing when it comes to, you know, pursuing, you know, profit-driven enterprise. I mean, one thing, you know, one lingering issue that I have in terms of voting on the motion on the dais, which I will be doing, you know, if we bring it to a vote, is the notion that by invoking the idea that the market drives more 2-bedroom units over studios, they can thereby change their essentially for-profit part of this plan. You know, I do hear what my colleagues have said with regard to giving short shrift to the BMR units, because that logic should be equally applicable to the BMR units as well. But I have been told by staff that it is very difficult, if not impossible, to take building 2 and make those adjustments. We could potentially just not allow the conversion from studio to from studio to 2-bedroom in building 1 in basically the profit center, so to speak. So I'm a bit discomfited by, you know, that kind of, you know, approach and you know, treatment of the BMR side of things. I think, you know, if you really took an honest look at it, I won't say it's an afterthought, but it is a constant conversation, you know, to put it, you know, politely, in terms of getting inclusionary zoning, not getting to a point where there's litigation. Palmer versus, you know, I think it was LA County, was about inclusionary zoning for, you know, rental housing units. There was litigation up here for owner occupied. You know, this is all part of that spectrum of a conversation. It's not ideal in terms of the whole policy of inclusionary interspersing, you know, within your other units, but it is a significant amount. But you know, that one lingering part is what kind of gives me some pause with regard to saying, well, we can do it to the for-profit stuff, but we're not necessarily going to convert some studios over 2-bedroom or even give you any kind of market analysis as to whether BMR residents have that sort of, you know, same consideration. But I, you know, if this comes to a vote, I will be voting for the motion on the table with the idea that this has, you know, incrementally improved over time as a project space. I don't see further hands raised at this time. Are there any other follow-on comments for council? So Councilmember Moore, followed by Councilmember Willie.
Okay, thank you. I really do hope that the De Anza students find employment at this facility. I had asked in the last meeting for a single BMR townhouse, and I want to reiterate this. There are 88 townhouses and row houses. If we had followed our BMR manual, we would have had 18 of those be affordable BMR units, affordable to families. And if we look at what happened at Valco, we ended up with no family affordable units, and it's repeating here. And I'm genuinely disappointed about that. And I think if it is not part of our if we're not required to have the sentence in our municipal code that allows the developer to not take the maximum density bonus units that they qualify for, I'd like to see if our attorney can find out if we can strike that line and have this be a requirement, because we were, in my mind, entitled to 94 and ended up with, I guess, about 16 instead, which is really disappointing, especially given that we need to meet our RENA numbers. And with that, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. Next, we have Councilmember Willie, followed by Vice Chow.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And so the important comments then that I'd like to make this evening, we previously approved this, gosh, what, 12 months ago? And we really wrestled that night where it's a part of the community, and how do we get the best project for all the community? And we really wrestled, and we approved it, 5-0. And then the project came back with some of the more beneficial parts for the community being significantly reduced. So we moved to continue it at the disappointment of a lot of the community seniors. But we're here to represent the whole community, and we did continue it, and the developer came back, and as he said tonight, they have made the project significantly better. I can't stress the importance of that. We are here to listen to the whole community and to do what we can for the whole community, understanding what type of project this is, and the process worked. That's democracy. We're not here to only focus on a particular very important sector, but we're here to be sure we're listening to them all. And it really speaks to me when we get emails that are from our seniors that say, I am very supportive of the revised modification. I want to voice my support for the proposed changes. So even the demographic for this particular project is voicing their support for the extra effort, the extra time that we put in for these improvements. And we got the additional retail, we got the additional parking, we got the better access from the senior center through the Paseo to the central green. That's going to help, I think, vitalize, a central green that will likely have some De Anza College student youth coming and enjoying this space that's shared with the senior population, the families in the row and townhouses, bringing their younger kids over into this area, where the Atria applicant said that's what helps the longevity of the seniors. And so,
sorry, Smart Will, if you could wrap.
Yeah, and so I'm supportive, very supportive of where we're at today. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Atria.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. Vice Mayor Chow, I don't know whose time I would lend. Councilmember Way, you have about a minute and a half. Did you want to provide some time for Vice Mayor
Sure.
Chow to wrap?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Vice Mayor Chow.
So first, I echo Councilmember Moore's frustration that there should be 15% of BMR for townhouse and row houses. This is something we raised before we approved the project, but that wasn't raised fast enough. The staff already allowed them to provide 100% senior BMR, and that issue should have been raised within 30 days in terms of the compliance with general plan. So that's the issue we should address for future projects because, and then, yeah, I echo that there doesn't seem to be justification for this height with the number of units, and we raised the same issue earlier. But first, I'd like to say that we also don't have any data whether what kind of senior units our residents need. I shared this pricing level of different senior projects we have, and this one is at the unit size is bigger than the most luxurious one in San Francisco. So we would be looking at a very luxurious price. Is that what we are? I don't know. And I hope that in the future, a few residents who speak at the council meeting doesn't represent all the council members and all the residents. I do hope that in the future there will be some kind of survey of what our residents actually need in terms of size and unit type. I just want to raise the issue. Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Let me just wrap this before we take a vote on the motion on the table by thanking everyone for being involved. I think we've had a fantastic discussion, and frankly, each and every comment and point of pushback has actually created improvement points on this project. I've been with this all the way through when acquisition by the current property owner took place, and it's been quite a change from what was originally put in there. So with that, let me go ahead and ask I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the vocabulary, our city clerk to please conduct a roll call vote with regard to the motion that is on the table.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. All right, great discussion. And let me go ahead and bring us over to the next item on our agenda. That was the final substantive item. We have oral communications continued. Those were completed. We have council and staff comments and future agenda items. I would like to just remind everybody, we're at 11:53. It's near the end of calendar year 2021. We have a brand new city manager, permanent, coming in on January 3rd. And so, if we want to begin anew, we have a very healthy work plan ahead of us. I will say just very briefly that within the new city manager's contract, and this was part of the discussion process, there are monthly performance evaluations. So council will be meeting with our new city manager on the first Mondays of the month as part of its dedicated representation of the public. At 8 a.m. on the first Mondays for an hour to go over that. And so you'll see a notice for January 3rd, the first day that Jim Troop starts. I believe that we are trying to go ahead and have a special meeting on January 13th, a week and 3 days after that, on the following Thursday. We don't have a regularly scheduled meeting on January 4th. We've canceled that in order to get those items that were postponed on today's agenda out of the way before our January 18th meeting, which is the only regularly scheduled meeting. And so before we go to council for any of these comments under this particular agenda item, I'd like to provide our Acting City Manager Diane Thompson an opportunity. Does staff have any comments before we close out this meeting?
I don't have any comments at this time, Mayor Paul. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Diane. And so my fellow city council members, with all that as preface, let us go to Councilmember Willie.
So for future agenda items, two, although maybe they can be combined into one. So for Westport, staff allowed all the parking under the BMR to be removed without consulting us. Not 10%, not 20%, but 100%. I would like us to have a study session or something where we give direction as to the authority that's granted to staff's approval. Now, I agree that unfortunately also for Westport, the BMR was allowed by staff to be put 100% in one building and not dispersed. So again, it should have come to the city council for at least our consideration. So I think we need a study session and giving direction.
Okay, Councilmember Willie, thank you very much. So noted. I'm going to go ahead and be fair to the other members of the council and grant equal time before midnight here. I promise you I will follow up with our acting city manager as well as our permanent city manager. Councilmember Moore? And Councilmember Moore, you'll need to unmute your mic.
I never do that. Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul, and happy winter solstice to everyone. I agree with Councilmember Willie for both of those items, and I'm hoping if somebody will also agree that we need to look at the line in our density bonus ordinance, which allows to not have all of the density bonus units used, because you could have a project taking a waiver with only adding one density bonus unit. And as this project first came to us, it only had 5 density bonus units. So I would be, especially in light of our need for meeting the RENA numbers.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I promise I will follow up on that as well. I don't see any other hands raised from council at this time. And so on behalf of our city council, let me just bid everyone in our community and outward a happy new year, happy holidays, as well as hope you have a wonderful 2022. This concludes the final meeting of the Cupertino City Council in 2021. The meeting is adjourned. We bid you a good night.